Coming to you live from the Stream.TV studios in Hollywood, California, Pensado's Place is brought to you by Vintage King, The Recording Connection, and the Blackbird Academy.
Our returning champion brought Pensado's Place into filmland. We're happy to have him back. We've got a brand new ITL. We have some interesting stuff that the Pensado students have done. We're proud of them. We're going to tell you about that. You're at the place. It's Pensado's Place.
Yay. Fun times in Hollywood today, my friend. I got my buddy Alan Meyerson on today. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How about you?
You know what? My mixes are sounding good, so I'm good. Everything in my life is related to my work.
That is true. And you're in high-res land, correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
96 bits? And
95.
95.
I'm working on 96.
Okay,
I'm certified.
Cool.
I get Pro Tools certified for 96 in about a week.
That was right after the lifeguard certification?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Very good. You can ever combine the two?
There's something funny I could say there, Herb, but you know, I'm highly medicated.
Okay.
As always.
We'll go past that. Okay, cool. Well, good to know
recreationally medicated.
It's good to know it's a regular week. Man.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. Shall we get on with the matters at hand?
Let's do it, my friend.
Cool. Hey guys, what's going on out there in audio land? Hope everyone is doing well. Yep. Time for our weekly soiree. We're back with you. Thank you so much for your likes and subscribes. As usual, keep it going if you would. That is so important. Big shout out to our Vintage King team. Our man Mike Nira is doing some sheriff work. He's calling and emailing around to keep the industry standards really high. And Mike, go ahead on with your bad self. That's all we can say.
I know. I'm big fans of the brothers.
Oh, we love.
They're in terms of when I say they're one of us, I mean us and our gang here. You know.
No question. Yeah. No question. These are musicians who love audio. Respected, and we love the relationship. It's just fabulous.
They had to start a company because they had so much stuff lying around. They ran out of spots to store it, so they started selling it.
It's their own version of starting in the garage.
You gotta love a company that starts like that.
No question. The Blackbird Academy, speaking of, is still putting together that April studio class. This is in addition to their fantastic live course, and then obviously access to the awesome Blackbird studios. John McBride and I had an interesting discussion. We understand how big a decision it is for a student to pick up and move. John McBride and team are sensitive to that. It's a big family decision, and that matters whether you're in the U.S. or in one of our international countries. So a couple things, if you don't know, that Dave and I talked about. Be aware, Nashville presents unique options, almost unlike any other musical city in the U.S., right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the sheer number of top-flight musicians and artists, studios, publishing, management, and marketing companies, a bunch of labels, both indie and major, musical neighborhoods like Music Row, Berry Hill, The Gulch, and more. But that's not, in my opinion, not even the best part. What Dave and I love is the musical crossover. Nashville has as much serious rock as it does country, gospel, blues, pop, and everything else under the sun. Actually, when we were there back toward the end of last year, an engineer told us he had cut 200 rap records last year, which is amazing. There's a thriving Christian music scene. Finally, just for you to think about, the cost of living is fantastic. There's an international airport. There's great food, great sports, and frankly, even greater people. So, all in all, if you're thinking about making a choice, we obviously feel strongly it's hard to go wrong with the Blackbird Academy, even beyond the awesome school. It's a great city and something for you to contemplate.
Let me interject something here. I was a victim of going to Nashville recently and still had the mindset that Nashville was the way it was when I was last there 25 years ago. It ain't the same city. It's first of all, it's clean. It's just a great, wonderful place. But all that aside, quality of living issues. If you're in music and you like to play music and you're a musician, it's the place to be, Herb. You know, it's like you know my philosophy. I like being around creative people. I like being around people more talented than myself, and everybody we met was more talented than me.
We don't mean to do a travelogue about Nashville, but we were trying to think about the decisions somebody has to make as a family or as a student economically if you're going to pick up and move, and so just stuff for you to consider. Moving on. The Pensado Awards momentum is going from high to just nutty. I mean, what is going on, David P? What do you think?
I don't know, but all I know is if this thing don't slow down, I think the GNP is going to drop by about 2% with what you're spending on this, my friend.
That is for sure.
I think the California economy just gained 0.5% in terms of GDP.
I am sleeping lightly, to say the least.
Yeah, help us out if you can, you know.
So, couple things. First, you guys have been absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
You've kicked ass. You got this thing launched. You pulled the community together. You allowed us to bring on the pros needed to do this right. And now, damn it, we got us a show, and we're going to put on a show. Yeah. Because of all of your efforts, now all kinds of brands and charities want to get involved. Here's how we'll break all this out. All of our individual enthusiasts and amateurs continue to gather at fundanything.com/Pensado watering hole. Talk with Will Thompson. You can contribute. You can ask questions. You also can go to our Facebook page to do the same. So you guys hear that every week. That's where you can go. If you're a company or a charity with an interest in the Pensado Awards, there's a one sheet available for you. Just hit us at info@pensadosplace.tv and we'll get one to you. Would recommend, given what's going on, if you're interested, hit us pretty quickly so we can get that information to you so you can make a decision.
Yeah, please, charity. Charities are, that's got to be a part of it.
Big point here. For the record, no brand, no entity, nobody will have an editorial impact or control over any award whatsoever forever. That is pristine space that we're keeping clear for the voters and the amateurs and the pro committees. Those folks make those votes. Here are the details. June 28th, Fairmont Hotel, Santa Monica, California, 1 block from the beach. $50 is the ticket price. I believe Mr. Will Thompson intends to have the landing page up at the top of April with the online ticketing info, reasonable hotel options for you, all the stuff you need to know. Remember, around April 1st, that landing page is going to go up. This is going to be a blast. It's a celebration. The pro committee is just about damn near everybody you ever want to see.
Is there going to be alcohol involved?
There's going to be alcohol involved, buddy. Absolutely. It's going to be a
party.
Who's
going to be sober to film that?
I'm working it out now. Okay. So, again, we want to see you there. It's going to be a blast. Thank you so much. Finally, to our boys at Recording Connection, what's up? Their mantra is learning where you live. We got a very cool piece being shot up in Canada. One of the players at the National Hockey League who loves audio, really respects it. He signed up. He was going to learn under Recording Connection. They've given us clearance to shoot a piece on them, so we're going to show how that process works in real time.
Hockey's that thing you do on ice?
Yeah, it is.
In Miami, we didn't have a lot of hockey.
No, we did in Kentucky, in Canada, not in Kentucky, okay. In Canada. One last thing. Before you introduce the ITL, can we take a second on the Pensado students?
Let's take more than that.
Okay, cool.
Splurge, take 2, big man.
So, first of all, congratulations to the guys for reaching 8,800 members, which I got that note today. Bill, Ma'at, Gordon, and FL, well done, as well as the whole team. But even better is you guys rallied around my fellow Kentuckian, Joe Salyer. The facts are some scumbag roach farmer ripped off all his gear, broke into his place, knocked out his bookings, threatened his livelihood. And from what I can monitor, the Pensado students have stepped up. They're taking care of one of their own. They're making sure he can come back. I mean, what a fabulous, what about this group?
And talking to Bill Kamek today, I teared up driving. I mean, it embodies everything I would hope the show would be and more. I mean, these guys
with no input from us,
none. I'm so proud of the Pensado students Facebook page because they're self-regulated. They started themselves, but they just. It's just the greatest place ever to go and hang out and get questions answered and not have anybody being judgmental. And one of the things I love about that the group is that they don't answer questions when they don't know the answer, which sometimes that happens on the internet. And
it's very honest.
I love what they did with Joe, you know.
So, Joe, this is personally to you, from Dave and I, heads up, we'll be in touch. We're monitoring the situation. You will be okay. You can bet on that. You will hear from us this week. It's going to be okay. David P., introduce our ITL.
sometimes I over squash my stereo bus, and sometimes I like the sound of it. And so what I'm showing you is a way to kind of unsquash it. So this is a little mastering technique that you might find useful. Recently I was working on a track by my friend Michelle Montano, produced by Scott Galt with the Red Boys, and featuring Boyz II Men. And I felt like I needed a little something after I mastered the track. I kind of mastered it myself. And then I turned it over to another mastering engineer, Alex DeYoung. But before I gave it to the mastering engineer to master professionally, I felt like some of the things I had on the stereo bus could be a little amplified, and I could get a little more dynamics back. I liked what I was doing, and I thought the mix was perfect, but I just wanted a little more movement. So one of the first things I experimented with and I liked was, depending on your DAW, you can do it any way you want. I've got my grid in Pro Tools set to a quarter note, but you can do it any way you want. And I'm just going to draw this out on the automation line. I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit so you can hear it. Now, each quarter note, we're going to get a little bump in volume. So watch how it gives it a little flow. Okay, let me show you without it. Okay, try it one more time so you can kind of get a... Oop, I got it backwards. You see, my first one is down. I want my first one to be up. There we go. I'm blowing up my stereo bus a little bit, but you know, we would bring this whole level down and start at 0. Now that's one way you can do it. Another thing I tried that I really kind of dug was doing it manually. I'm going to draw this in, and this time I'm just going to go by feel. I'm just going to close my eyes and go for it. So you can see that I went a little nuts, but I like this part right in here. Let's check this part. I think that has a cool vibe. Let's check it out without it. Sounds a little dull without it, doesn't it, guys? Check it out. Okay, it adds a little bit of dynamics after my a little bit of compression, not much. Needle's barely moving. Let me A/B that for you. And then a limiter after that. can see very little going on there. What is this guy? Oh, this is a little bit of a expander. You might experiment with this too, this expander. I think I like it better without the expander. But you can try an expander, experiment with it. So that gives you some options to play with. After you've done your limiting, after you've done your compression, that doesn't have to be the end of the road. You can still, in fact, I think that's the name of this song, The End. It doesn't have to be the end. You can still do something and experiment with some automation moves after your limiting and create your own little dynamic world. Experiment, play with it, try it, and as always, if you get some cool ideas, send them to me, okay? All right.
What a pleasure for us. About the top of our second year, I think it was the first week in January, or the first week back, episode 50, we decided to foray into film, and we needed somebody to take us, we needed a Lewis and Clark to take us through, and we reached out to one of Dave's friends and mentors and buddies and peers, Alan Meyerson, and he came and absolutely killed the show, and we have been after him since then, and we got him this week. Welcome back, man.
It was one of the most fun days of my life.
Absolutely, mine too.
That's what you said last night too, Alan.
I know.
Make up your mind.
What were you guys doing last night that he would say
man.
that?
You don't want to know.
Okay,
we
good.
were like EQ and kick drums for about 6 hours.
Have you?
I was doing the bottom, he was doing the top.
Oh, okay,
Whoa,
okay.
But that was funnier than I meant it.
Yeah, I know, but we caught you. We supported you.
You know what though? That gives me an idea. Well, we're going to start in the wrong place, but why not? Explain to the guys how you sometimes break up your reverbs into 2 reverbs, one with more bottom, one with more top.
Right.
Together confine one reverb, and then how you do.
Well,
That's so
nowadays,
cool.
in modern days, I actually do it even more than that. I have reverbs that have different characters going into the reverb. So I'll take I'll create a reverb, say in my DAW in Pro Tools, and say I'm using the UAD 140, and I'll get my basic sound that I want to get with it, and then I'll duplicate it 2 or 3 times, and then I'll have one of them where I'll roll off the top end, and one of them where I'll roll off the low end, so then I can balance between the 2 and control just how much air there is in the reverb, and
still with the pull tech.
Well, with a plug-in now.
Okay. But a pull tech so that you get this, you can do the same amount either way.
It's a wide band. Sometimes I use a pull tech. I've actually been using the Massenburg, the MDW, quite a bit for that because I like it's a pretty broad band, low frequency roll off, and it's high frequency roll off. And then in addition to that, I've been doing a third one, usually on a separate send, but the same reverb sound where I hit the input with the delay and add a little bit of character to that delay, so that it's got yet another quality to the sound of the input, so that the combination of the 3, as the track goes on or the percussion parts get larger, I can really sort of nurture the reverb to be what I want it to be. If it's getting big low-endy in the primary signal, I can back off the low-end reverb so I don't get muddy, and if it's a little bit more open sounding, I can warm it up a little bit. If there's a solo instrument that I want to hit it with, I might add the delayed version to add a little bit more character to the sound.
Wow. Man, are you doing this in movies or just records?
No, in movies.
Doing it in the movies?
Absolutely.
You know what? Something that stuck with me since the first show is the number of tracks that you deal with sometimes. Like on Inception, how many tracks did you deal with?
God knows, thousands, hundreds. But it starts as thousands and then gets culled down to hundreds, and then the hundreds get culled down. It's this process of premixing and premixing and premixing, so that by the time you're done, you really are looking at these large food groups of, orchestral, live orchestra, processed orchestra, live percussion, computer-generated stuff, solos, samples. So in the end, it's really almost like an 8-channel mix.
Of all
but
these
to
groups.
get to that, on, Inception was one where we had 5, 6, 7 passes of orchestra per cue. So I'm having to mix that, to pre-mix that into the final mix. But I'm always able to go back and unwind those mixes if I need to get more of the rhythmic content of the violas in the rhythmic content, or if I want to have less of the basses in the melodic content or stuff like that. I'm always able to go back. And something we were talking about before, what that makes me want to do is get a mix going really quickly. Like I like to say that I spend 10% of the time doing 90% of the mix. And I really get the mix happening really quick, and then I put it away. And I go through this process so that I have a lot of stuff. And then I go back and I start doing the little tweaky details of it so that I'm not spending my time in the process of building the sound being tweaky.
Do you still, you're misleading my audience, Alan, come on.
I am.
Do you still do the thing like we all talk about this, where you'll pull up a track, you'll EQ it, you'll put the fader, and then you never go back to it again. It's like once you touch it, it's where it needs to be every possible conceivable way, and then when you get to the end, you're done. That's why you can do it so fast, is you have the knack. I can't go straight forward. I have to like tweak and tweak and tweak. But I've seen you just touch something once and that's done.
Well, as the tracks get more complex, that
you know the union frowns on that.
I know that. I've been accused of costing people money.
That's why you can do 90% of the work in 10% of the time.
Well, also it gets those healthcare hours.
It's not so much the EQ as much as it's just sort of the scope of it. You know, like do I have? Oh, when I get to the end of the movie, I realize that it's really not about the solo ethnic flute. It's more about the orchestral elements of the melody. So then I'll go back in and I'll tweak that back down, and then that'll help me change some decisions as it goes.
When you sort of pre-mix and then you step away from it,
right?
Does that perspective in that time help you come back with a clearer picture? Is that when that process happens?
And the premixes don't tend to change. Once I get the premix where I want it, that's like what you're saying is I EQ fast and then I don't change the EQ. I get my premix pretty quickly, and then I don't tend to go into that. I start looking at the mix as a smaller and smaller and smaller process. That's how I like to do it.
Okay.
So that if, say, Hans was to come in and want to sit with me and mix, I could say to him, there's your mix in these 8 faders, and he could just ride that. And then if he goes, I really want to get into the violas, we hit a button, it spills out, and then he can do that.
Recently, you've been recording a lot of live strings. A lot of us think that you're the best at that too. You're built to describe your technique, because I don't think people understand. You're using the word's not automated. It's remote control mic preamps that are in the room.
Right.
That way you can have a short run from them. Anyway, you describe it better than me.
Right. Well, if you want to start there, I have this Grace mic preamp package that has at the moment 32 mic preamps that I control from one remote control. So everything's in one place. And then with some of the scores I do, I have these custom-made proprietary demo versions of this preamp made by this guy Fred Forcell, which then he later released as a production unit called the JFET. But I bought he sent me the prototypes to play with, and I liked the prototypes so much I bought them. And I got 6 of those, and I'll put my main 5 mics. So I look at the room basically as 3 layers. There's the bottom layer, which is the spot mics, the mics that are closest to the instruments, and they tend to be in a film score more about accenting and helping solidify a particular section than being the basic part of the sound. Then there's the height, about 7 to 8 feet, which is sort of the general reaching everything in the room, but with a lot of presence. And that tends to be maybe 35% of the sound. And then there's the room, which basically is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 microphones, which now, because of Dolby Atmos and these new formats that are more multi-channel than the old formats is expanding to 9 and 11 microphones. And that tends to run at about 11 to 13 feet, depending on how big and how wide a sound I want. So when you look at it as, well, here's my room, and now I want to make the room have a little bit more presence. I push up presence level A, which is the next level down, and then that all sounds great. I just need a little more cello. Then I'll bring in my spot mics and do that by being able to bring the cello in. So the spot mics, I try to keep, only until I need them. And the beauty of that is when you get into a mix with very complicated music, with a lot of production and a lot of percussion and stuff like that, the things you lose sometimes are the motor and stuff like that. So I always have a couple of mics on the viola or a couple of mics on the cello that I could push up that I haven't used in the basic sound of the orchestra to solidify the motor part, or woodwinds, or any of those things. But you're not EQing anywhere along the way, are you? Very, very little EQ, if any. Just sometimes a high pass.
Oh, okay.
On like if I have live percussion, like when I did King Kong, we had 120 musicians in the room, and we had 5 percussionists playing. And sometimes with the violas, you need to roll off a little of the low end so that the bass drum, what we call the gran casa, which is a big ass bass drum, is a little bit in control on those tracks.
Describe to me the importance in how you manipulate, especially on video games, the low end, like your explosions are like, they give you a bowel movement. I mean, they're like low. How do you do that?
On video games?
Usually on video games, but you do it in movies too.
Yeah, the bowel movement effect is something that I worked really hard on.
The brown note?
Brown note is, I've worked quite a bit on that. And there's actually, for every brown note, there's 2 brown notes.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness.
Because I want to make sure
harmonies.
I want to make sure that brown note will speak, even if by some chance in the theater that you're watching it in, the subwoofer doesn't work. Oh. So there is that content in the main speakers, and then for the lucky few that get to see it in a really good theater, we'll hit that subwoofer. And what that means is I don't use the subwoofer much. Oh. I'm saving it for those moments where I want the audience to have a little bit of a physical experience,
It's kind of what you're missing, and then you get it.
Now, video games is as I'm sure you'll know, is an interesting process. I tend to mix those on headphones and, and in-ears and on my laptop computer.
You squish the piss out of those, too.
I squish the piss out of those things. And
because that's how people use it.
Yeah. Right. To get the low end, I do a lot of sidechain compression on low-end elements for the rest of the track.
Explain sidechain in case they don't know.
So you can, when you use a compressor, you can have the general program material triggering the threshold of the compressor, and then you'll get general compression. Or you can ask the compressor to only look at certain elements of the mix, maybe the bass drum or the low-end elements.
Like the dance guys do.
Right. And then you're controlling a compressor. It probably would be a second compressor that's on the bus, because you'd still want general compression, so that when the bass drum hits, it takes down just a little bit everything else. So the bass drum appears to be just ridiculously bigger than anything else, but gets out of the way quickly. You could do the opposite of that too, where you have a mix hitting it, like my Manley Varimu has a high pass built into it, so that I can tell it not to look at the low end, so that if I have a huge low end, it's not making the compressor that much gain reduction on the compressor. I can tune it so that it's not seeing that much low end. But sidechain compression and multiband compression have become 2 of the biggest tools that I use in film score, and I'm sure a lot of the guys in the record business are using too.
I was still confused with multiband compression. Do you tend to use it on single tracks or on the pre-mixed groups?
Both, depending on the sound. I use it on single tracks if I really want, if I have a very dense group of percussion instruments, then I'll use a bunch of multiband compressions to keep everything out of each other's way. And that enables me, when something's not playing, that when part A is not playing, part B can have its 500 back.
But are you using it more for the compression side than the EQ side?
Well, I'm using it for the frequency-based compression.
Okay.
So I'm treating the compression as if it's an EQ.
You got 4 little side chains going on.
6. I'm actually using like the Wave C6,
Okay.
which gives you the 4 side chains going on, and then 2 additional side chains that are controlled with a separate bandwidth control, which I find really, really useful.
Take me, if you don't mind, take me through, like, would you ever use it on like, say, a vocal?
Yeah.
And like, take me your thought process, because that's something I'm still struggling with.
I love it on vocals, the few vocals that I get to work on in film music. I just did this movie, Divergent, and we had Ellie Goulding on there, so I got to play with her vocals a little bit on it.
Did you decide to chain her?
I multi-banded her.
Oh, okay.
Because, you know, if you think about it, you get so many different frequency colorations in the life of a vocal. You know, they might move closer to the microphone and you might get more proximity effect, or certain notes in their voice really speak through. And it's not the whole note, it's certain quality of the note, certain color of the note. You know, we're all very familiar with what happens at 300 and at 5.5K and the S frequency and that boxiness. And the thing is, if you use an EQ, it works great, but then you always have that same value of the EQ there all the time. So notes where she's a little bit thinner, you're not helping any by rolling out some of what could make her seem warmer.
Right.
With a multiband, you can sort of have it be, the threshold be frequency dependent, so that when the voice gets a little thinner, the frequencies that aren't in that particular moment can come back up and help you with keeping it warm and stuff like that.
You know, just so that we keep our audience caught up, give our audience a couple of the games that you've worked on, so in case they want to go check it out.
Whoa, Call of Duty 4,
which I consumed in 24 hours.
Oh my God! You know, going back to the day I did the first 3 Metal Gear Solids. The one I just did is called, and I went to Belgium to record it actually, Knack, K-N-A-C-K, which is coming out. Oh, if I get this wrong,
Soon.
It's out. It's embedded into one of the games, and I don't want to just say which one. Because
one of the consoles.
One of the consoles. I'm not sure which console.
Oh, very cool.
It's embedded in, and it's going to be the flagship game for the younger kids.
Oh, nice, nice. And Divergent is coming out soon.
Divergent's coming out tomorrow.
Right. So by the time you guys see that, it'll be out in the theater.
Yeah, I want to talk about Divergent because you're kind of pioneering something with that. DJ Junkie did the soundtrack.
Junkie XL.
Junkie XL, and what a talented guy.
Oh my gosh.
The Elvis thing and all. But you had to approach it a little bit differently than a normal movie you would do. You actually went for it in terms of the stereo bus and hammering it, right?
Well, you know, he brought me something to hammer, which was already hammered. You know, first of all, the stuff came to me 12 dB louder than anything else I had dealt with. I mean,
Yes,
this thing
my
was ridiculous. And the beauty of it was that these were all live sounds. This is all...
No joke.
This is not stuff that he stuck in a computer. You know, this is stuff that we recorded, you know, tin cans and sinks that we recorded in hallways with microphones at different perspectives, and then processed the microphones all differently.
What's your go-to mic for a sync?
You
don't have to answer that.
I do have an answer.
Go ahead, sorry.
It depends if it's a heat sink. Sorry.
Oh, man.
Sorry about that. So Junkie is very aggressive with his sound getting. So then the trick is to bring it to me, what can I do to make this sound like this incredibly well-produced thing and bring it to that next level of cinematic experience, you know, the width. So he was responsible for the forward energy, and I was responsible for the width. And again, a lot of it was multiband compressions. A lot of it was bus compression. You know, although we use a lot of stem buses, I'm still using a brick wall limiter. And what I did do in this case, which was different than what I do in a lot of movies, was I actually had a separate rig for all of my buses to come into, so that I had a UAD card and a Waves package to do bus compression. And I really did almost mastering on every single stem.
Wow. Jeez. I notice, because I'm a moviegoer, it feels in general to me that the music and the sound is generally more aggressive.
It's getting more aggressive.
Is that okay?
It's getting more aggressive.
It feels that way just as a consumer.
Another movie that Junkie did, which I was not involved with, 300, the new 300,
Yes.
which just came out.
Yes.
Very, very aggressive.
Absolutely.
You know.
Noah feels aggressive. I mean, there's just things coming at you that
You know, I did a movie with Danny Elfman last year, Wizard of Oz, and even that, you know, we had taken it to another level for Danny with the aggressiveness of it. And when I say aggressive, it doesn't mean that it loses its musicality,
No.
and it doesn't lose its depth and its air.
Right.
What it just means is that in a funny way, by the music being louder, and louder isn't necessarily the right word, when it gets mixed down into the track, more of the content of what the music is comes through against the sound effects and the dialogue.
And I feel like it becomes another character.
And that's really what it's about,
That's the
isn't
goal.
it? It's about making it another character.
Yeah, that precisely.
Man, you do so many things well. We should do pick a month and do Alan Meyerson month.
Oh my goodness.
Reverb.
bore you quickly.
I learned how to use reverbs from your records. One of the things that you and I have never talked about is the way you pan. You use pans in a different way than a lot of people. Like you describe it as solving a problem with masking. Like if you've got a hi-hat and a shaker over here on the right, that's a dumb example, but
it's a basic example.
Can you kind of give your philosophy on how you pan?
Well, I try to get things that are like instruments into different spaces of the stereo,
like
or
sonically?
the surround. Well, both sonically and physically.
Okay.
You know, because it does. If you use the example of a hi-hat and a shaker, and you put them on one side, it's going to be very hard to know where the hi-hat starts and the shaker ends. But if you pan them onto either side, then it becomes much clearer. So if you want to clear up information, you can use panning to do that, to really clear up the masking. I also, in the film world, use a lot of this pseudo concept that has been is called the Haas effect, which really isn't the Haas effect, but where you're delaying one side by a few milliseconds to create so you take something that's left and right and you create the illusion that it's coming more from the right than coming from the left.
But you're doing it with a delay as opposed to a pan button.
Well, because you need a stereo signal to be able to do it with. You could take a mono signal and put it through.
You're using the Haas on a mono signal.
Well, you can you take like the standard digi short delay and the mono to stereo version of it, and one side you leave on input, one side you go to 100% output, and just give 6 milliseconds worth of delay, and you'll create the image that is coming from the side that is at 0 delay. So you can create imaging that way, and not, mono is a very weird thing, especially in film. If it really is only coming from one speaker, it's sort of not fair to the guy on the other side of the theater. I tend to try to keep the image a little bit more interesting using depth as opposed to pure mono panning.
That's so cool. One of the reasons you were embraced by the film world so quickly and thoroughly is because you brought your record sensibilities to the film world, and that's kind of rare, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of great film mixers that did records, but I think that coming from the '80s world that I came from and the '90s world, and doing, spending a long time in New York doing dance records and stuff like that, and getting involved with a guy like Hans who loves that stuff, gave me a little bit of freedom to use some of the tricks that I used in the record world, some of the percussion concepts that I used in the record world into film mixing.
I remember when we used to all say your records sounded so theatrical. Now they really are.
Right. I think it was a good fit all along for me to end up in the film world.
Go ahead. Speak a bit about you and Hans' relationship. What a great place to be at an apex of.
Well, we just hit 20 years.
Wow.
Are you serious?
Are you kidding, Alan?
We just hit 20 years.
That's unbelievable.
And as Hans, when I said to Hans, you know, we just hit 20 years, he says in his German voice, "I'm sorry."
But what's that been like, that journey?
It's just been wonderful. I mean, it's, you know, we journeyed through so many different styles of music, from you know, DreamWorks animation to Black Hawk Down to Gladiator, Pirates movies, Batman movies, you know, romantic comedies like As Good as It Gets, and you know, we've experimented with so many different ways to record things, and most things worked, a lot of things didn't, you know, and he's never ever said no to me.
He seems never satisfied. My sense is that he's always curious.
He's always to this day. I get emails from him, like you started talking about you were joking around about 96K. The other day he forwards me an article about some guy that believes that the whole 96K thing doesn't have validity. So now we're going to do another shootout. You know, that's what we do. We just, there's a new concept.
Tell him my friend said drop it down to 95 and he'll be happy.
Right, I think that might work. Just very speed it, you know.
Even numbers in music just never work out.
Right.
You know, because then you get like major 6. And,
right, exactly.
But anyway, it's got to be a bit relieving not to have to worry about genre anymore in terms of your mixing, but are there genres you have to worry about in terms of movies? In terms of an approach, would you approach a romantic comedy with the same mindset you would Divergent?
No, of course not, because Divergent, the music is a character, and in a romantic comedy, the music, if the person notices the music in a romantic comedy,
bad thing.
Then you did something wrong, unless it's a major theme which comes up at a moment where the major theme is supposed to come up, you know. But if there's during a dialogue scene, if they notice the music, then you've sort of taken away from what the movie's supposed to be about. So when you mix a romantic comedy or a dialogue-driven movie, I'm constantly listening to the dialogue, and I treat it like a lead vocal, you know. And I'm paying attention to that. Not that it doesn't end up in another stage where there is a dialogue mixer who is combining music and the dialogue, but I want to have that first pass at making sure my oboe melody is not getting in the way of you know, Angelina Jolie's line, or I don't know why I picked her, just because she's so
I know why you picked her.
And I concur with your choice.
Halle Berry.
Cool, I concur with that too.
I love some of your work, all of your work with Daft Punk early on. Was that kind of like the beginning of the relationship between them and Pharrell? Because you were working on both.
No. They had their relationship with Pharrell before me. But what was fun, what happened, you know, Daft Punk got in touch with me when they wanted to do Tron. They had sort of made the decision exactly how they wanted to do it personnel, as they do. They're very, very structured in their plans. And I guess I was, even before I knew I was on board to mix that movie. But while we were in the studio doing the Tron movie, they had done a single for Pharrell, and they gave me the opportunity to help them mix it. You know, mixing for Daft Punk is an interesting process because they're so good that what you get delivered is so good.
They can't hear with those helmets on. It must
I
be easier.
know. I think they have little speakers. That they gave me the track and let me sort of tweak at it and go at it. And then the funny thing was that they were so happy with the tiny little 1% and 2% changes that I made that when they needed to go in and change a vocal line, they wouldn't remix it. They went into like the instrumental version and just laid the vocal on top of it. They wouldn't. Every time we tried to recall it, they were like, "No, it's not as good." And I'm like, "Really?" Because but they knew, and sure enough, when I gave it listen from their point of view, they were right. You know, that whole concept of recall just wasn't flying with them.
What was their ear drawn to? More percussive things or vocals, or
on the Daft.
Well, when they said it didn't sound like the recall didn't come back like the original,
it was just little tiny shades of keyboard levels and vocal delays, and it's just really hard to explain exactly what it was that they were hearing that was different. But the two of them are of one mind, so when they make a decision, it is the decision.
The new Pharrell album, you did all the strings on that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. That was a pleasure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, you know, doing strings for pop is a different sensibility than doing strings for film, because you don't go from the top down like you do in a film score. You sort of go from the bottom up, you know, because it would just be too grand sounding. There wouldn't be enough space in something like that to create it. So the first thing you do is the main mics, what we call the decker tree, the left, the center, and the right mics. I put them closer together when I'm recording for pop, so that there's less phase information involved. It's a little bit more of a cohesive sound, because I'm not going to use the center channel as much, because I'm going to mix it down to stereo.
Stereo, yeah.
And then I do tend to use more of the spot mics on something like that. But he was such a delight to be with. He loved great ideas, and he's a great guy. He is really a tremendous guy.
Yeah, he really is.
I can't say enough about him.
Yeah, same.
And how nice he was to the musicians, and he went out and shook everyone's hands and took pictures, and
been that way consistently from the time he was a teenager.
Right.
Just
tremendous guy.
Yeah.
And he has an incredible relationship with Hans.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's magical.
Yeah.
I can't remember, so help me. You one time took a mono mix for a movie, and then you ran it back out to the studio, and then you mic'd it with 5-1 miking technique.
Right, more than one time.
That's crazy.
It's not even mono. I mean, there's a few situations that when I did the movie Traffic, I actually booked Capitol Studios, and I know you guys are friends with Paula Salvatore, so I'll tell you about this. Sure. And all I wanted was the room, and I set up 2 speakers out in the room, and I took 2 live chambers and the room, and I built myself some stems of just the synth sounds, because we weren't going to record anything live, and they wanted to have this impression of organic matter, but keeping it all synths. So the only way to do that was with organic matter.
Wow.
So I pumped it out into the room live. It's what they call, in the film world, they call that worldizing, which was an expression made by this guy, Walter Murch.
How do you set your mics up?
Well, that's the interesting thing. In that case, I did it as a standard orchestral almost setup, where left, center, right, left surround, right surround, and then pumped it out of 2 speakers, and then took the output of that and pumped it into 2 of the live chambers at Capitol. So when I went back to mix, I had the room and then I had the chambers. And I was able to just really, I mean, it was incredible adding 5% of that. And you go, oh, I don't really hear a difference. And then you turn it off, and it's like someone vacuumed out the ambience, you know. And then the
brain loves ambience. It loves to process ambience.
Who does?
Our brains.
Our brain loves ambience, yes. And then I was telling Chris Nolan about that when we were doing the movie Prestige. Sure. And he said, well, why don't you do it for Prestige? And so I went and I did the same thing on Prestige. If I have 2 seconds to just... So on Blood Diamond, which was a movie I did with James Newton Howard, they actually had me mixing at the 20th Century Fox scoring stage, because they wanted me to be right next to the director. And I figured I have this big, huge scoring stage, so I set up 4 or 5 different speakers and 5 or 6 different microphones, and had all these different pathways of taking my conga drums and pumping it out one speaker and recording it on that microphone, recording that piece of audio, and then processing that piece of audio. So it became a whole nother element of the mix. It was really, really creative.
Was there were there any specific challenges from a mixing standpoint, from a sound standpoint, with White House Down?
White House Down was, well, the biggest challenge was the guy who wrote the music is also the co-producer and the editor, Harold Closer. So
that's tough.
Having his attention was the hardest thing. We recorded a tremendous amount of music in a very short period of time, full live orchestra. So we had strings, brass, winds, percussion, all live in the room. And he was like, you run this show, just tell me what you need separate. And we would do a pass and go, okay, percussion layout, record everyone, okay, let's record the percussion. Or maybe one solo and stuff. And then I was really left to my own devices to mix it. Really? And then deliver it to the stage, because he was embroiled in the dub, in the final, mix down of dialogue, music, and effects while I was mixing. And that moved very quickly. I mean, I think I spent maybe 4 days, 5 days on that whole movie.
Normally,
Is that right?
Normally, what would you spend?
10 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day of mixing. So if there's 70 minutes of music, it's 7 days of mixing. If it's 90 minutes of music, that's just an average. Sometimes you get 5 minutes a day. Sometimes you get 20 minutes a day. Right. And for scoring, you average about 14 or 15 minutes a day.
That's a whole nother world. Let's take it back to my world a little bit. You use saturation and harmonic coloration a lot. Can you give me your philosophy on that? Because you're actually using it more like EQ, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I use very little EQ now. I mean, less and less EQ all the time.
Harmonic generators?
I have 5 or 6 of them that are really good. I use Heat in Pro Tools just to get the thing started. And then I go in from there and we'll put little dashes. I use a plugin with the setting on 0.1, and it could be any one of these. It could be the Wave Mechanics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I use the Sound Toys one, the Decapitator.
Yeah, that's
I use that with just a tiny little bit. I just got a new one by Nomad Factory called Magnetic, which I'm loving. I use the Digidesign Lo-Fi, and I just use tiny little bits of it.
You abuse Lo-Fi.
I abuse it in a very subtle way. In a very, very subtle way. Sometimes I abuse it to the extreme, but then that's when I'm just creating a new sound, And I use subtle amounts of this stuff just to add richness and bring this more to the front.
Can you describe in detail what you're listening for when you add that?
Well, it's loudness, but it's loudness not done on a global. It's not like pushing the fader up. You don't get the same effect. You get the effect of it sounding like there's more harmonics, more subharmonics, depending on how you're setting the. On the Decapitator, they have that tone control where you can dial down. It's not just dialing down the amount of top end; it's dialing up the warmth and dialing down the sparkle at the same time. So I just play with those and set them in different places to create different places, different colors, and like the pastel of each of them can have, because a lot of times when guys are programming, they are using the same sounds a lot, and the sounds are coming from the same samplers and the same contact instrument, and sometimes the individuality gets a little bit lost, and I try to put that individuality back.
Do you do it inside the mix while you're mixing so you can hear how it's being affected ratio-wise or balance-wise, or you do it soloed?
I do everything inside the mix.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So here's a question. Since we all got on the phone this morning and decided to dress as a team, the Black Shirt Gang, why don't you tee your arm up and let's get ready for batter's box, sir.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Are you ready? You loose?
I'm very
Hold
loose.
on, let me take a sip.
There you go.
But there's an accolade that we might want to...
Well, we're going to see how he does. And
okay. Do that first?
Then we'll
okay.
come back.
Electric guitar.
Electric guitar is a 122, one of my custom 122 Vs and a 57 on the same driver, not quite in the center, slightly angled off, listening for the warm spot of the driver, going through either my Neve or sometimes...
Okay. Damn it. Good God. Why does he have to do that to me?
Well, he's already won the accolade.
He's my hero. Synth bass.
Synth bass. I take direct, baby, and then in the mix, I might use my little Decapitator on it and add a little bit of warmth to it.
Stereo bus.
Stereo bus is a conversation. I have my my Manley Varimu custom-made version in my Ear 825 EQ, which always lands on the stereo bus. And there's something about my particular Manley Varimu. I've rented other ones, and it just doesn't have quite the same thing. But then I bring it into an aux in my workstation, and on that aux, I've been using the UAD maximizer and multiband.
I want to plug in strings. Do you ever use a plug-in on strings?
Live strings or sampled strings?
I'll take either one.
Sampled strings, I'm definitely going to add a little harmonic content to it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to use, like now I'm using Magnetic on stuff like that, and the Bricasti reverb.
Ooh, our buddy. Acoustic guitar.
Acoustic guitar, I'm a 12th fret guy. I like it right up the leg, you know, and with a small cap, you know, like I have a Mercenary KM69, which I love on acoustic guitar. And then if I want a stereo sound, I'll add another guitar sort of in the body and just ghost it in a little bit. Not a guitar, I'll add a large cap. Like when I have a lot of these flea microphones, and I have a 47 that sounds tremendous, and I'll ghost that in sort of, you know, just to the right of the sound hole.
Okay. Live snare.
Live snare, I'm a 57 KM84 guy taped together on the on the top of it, 10 dB pad, and SM81 underneath, usually.
Oh, sure.
Phase reversed, just mixed in just for a little bit of top end.
Acoustic piano. And don't get smart with me, just something simple.
2 Sennheiser MKH800s or 2 of my Flea 12s.
You can get smart with me. I like what you do. Go ahead and tell 'em.
You know, and for me, I like it. I like it right on the rim height distance. So with the lid up, with the lid up, if you were to drop a line from the lid to the body, that's where I like to put the mics, right at that point, and panned out like that. If it's a film score, I might have 2 mics 6 feet away and balance between the two.
So you don't have them facing each other. You pan them out.
I'm not a big XY guy. I go for a slightly wider image and have it about 17 centimeters apart. Sometimes I do that, but usually it's just I ask the guy to play for me, and I look at what notes he's playing. Usually it's concentrated in one area, and I put where his left hand is playing, I'll sort of point to that area. Where his right hand is playing, I'll sort of point to that area.
And this is creating a stereo return. Okay, last one. It's a two-parter. Favorite plug-in for high-end, to get sweet high-end, like Alan Meyerson high-end. Don't look at me that way, Alan. High-end. High-end.
No, because there's a few of them, so.
Okay, just one. Well, I'll take 20. I don't care. Not anything that begins with an M made by Massenburg.
No, I love the Chris Lord-Alge EQP. Oh, the Puig Tech. I'm sorry, the Puig Tech EQP.
The top knob on that.
I love that one, and I've actually been using the HEQ quite a bit.
Yeah.
I like that HEQ.
I keep forgetting about it.
Yeah. I like that HEQ.
Weird, it comes up in a weird spot. Okay, but same thing, but in the analog world.
My 825, my ear 825 is just so sweet on the high end, and my Manleys. You know, I still use my massive passives on my orchestra stem, and I just love the high end that I get from those.
There's something weird about the massive passive. We're going to have to talk to Ivana. The top knob on that thing is so sweet on strings, but there's no string preset. Did you ever notice that?
There's no, you mean on the plug-in version of it?
Yeah. Okay, he beat me.
Well, it's not that. It's just that he's maintained. You probably don't know this. It was a great moment, and we just never mailed out the trophy.
Or the money.
Or the money. But we had designated you the first Babe Ruth winner of the award. And so the test was, will you maintain that? And I think he surpassed it. I don't have another award.
I think he went Barry Bonds, full steroids on me. Am I going to get sued for that?
The feds are out in the way.
I want a little bit to drink of what you guys are drinking.
I know, it's all in here.
Oh, man.
Chongor, are you over there?
Yep, I'm over
Good
here.
Good job, Alan.
Thank you.
I don't have the black shirt, though, so I missed the memo, unfortunately.
Well, the cool part is it's great to have our live stream audience back for a second. Thanks for being patient with us, guys. We're going to do more of these. Chongor, give us a couple questions for Alan.
This first one's from Ted Penn. When recording and arranging strings in a production that involves both orchestral upright bass and electric bass, how do you treat the double bass versus the electric bass, and which one dominates the mix?
They're usually playing different parts. The orchestral bass is usually the low end of the voicing of the orchestra. And then the electric bass is the electric bass. So usually they don't occupy the same area. But if they do occupy the same area and it's a real electric bass, like a band electric bass, I let the electric bass dominate it.
Another one, Chongor.
Jonas Peterson. Is there a line that you draw between a composer and an engineer? And if so, when is that line created?
Well, I don't write anything, and I'm really dependent on the composer for, all I can do is give him my best shot at a creative 5%. How can I make his music a little bit better? That's all I want to do is just make his music a little bit better. But the composer is the composer. He's my he's my boss and my friend and my colleague. So that's the way I look at that.
Go ahead, Chong.
MT Champion, while mixing a cinematic score, are there ever times you'll stray away from the picture?
When asked to, there are times where they want the music to lead the picture, where it becomes more of a music moment. And if I know that that's one of those moments, sometimes we'll pull stuff off the screen a little bit and let stuff happen in the surrounds. That's primary material. Instead of treating the surrounds as ambience, we'll treat it as a place where another string section might live, or a certain element might live, and get away from the picture. But it has to be something that's done in colleague with the director and with the sound effects designer and the dialogue mixer.
When you're doing your work, all those people are there at the same time?
No, but these are decisions. These are conversations that we have. I have a pretty good relationship with the people who are going to be mixing sound effects and editing sound effects and stuff like that. We stay in touch.
Chong,
do they acquiesce to your brilliance and let you do what you want to do?
If that is what is best for the picture at that moment,
of course,
they will acquiesce. 99.5% of the time, no.
Chong, give us one more.
Louis Ailman, what effects or techniques do you commonly use to get the drums sounding so powerful, but more importantly, memorable?
Memorable, great question.
Wow. A lot of that has to do with how the drums are produced and recorded, in the film. I think what the viewer is thinking about is like some of the big percussion and we record. Sometimes we go in and we do live percussion sessions with 5 or 6 percussionists recording at the same time. On Divergent, this is one example where he had already recorded everything and produced it, and he just felt that it was missing a little bit of life. So we had a drummer come in, and I recorded him in mono, and we recorded him 4 times. Left, right, left surround, right surround. With
playing the same exact part.
Playing the same exact part.
Cool.
And it was amazing.
Wow.
But, a lot of it has to do with compression, sidechain compression, creating more attack, sometimes creating more decay, depending on...
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
But also, too, I noticed that you're fearless in terms of you're not always trying to give the listener an accurate representation of what was in the room. You go into your own mind and figure out what they...
I rarely try to give the people, unless I'm doing a jazz record.
So you don't mind mutilating stuff to make it better. You're not restricted by that concept of it has to be what it was in the room.
No.
That's a big part of why, not a big part, but that's also a part of why your drum sounds so big, is because you're not tethered to any conception of what they should sound like.
Yeah, but I think that that's the case with a lot of people. If you were to record, a well-recorded drum kit in a pop record needs to have the Dave Pensado process put on it to make it sound like it belongs in a pop record.
I got you.
Three things before we wrap up. One, there was a discussion before the show started about potentially coming over and shooting you. And we'll do a special piece for our audience. I think they'd like that.
I'd like that.
Yeah, and I think we'd love it. 2, your thoughts, if any, on our sort of Pensado Awards foray.
It's tremendous. I can tell you in my world, the music mixer is not included in the Best Sound Academy Award. So I've had 6 movies that I've mixed music for that have won for Best Sound, and I don't, really participate in that. Wow. So a chance for us to be recognized, for this part of the industry to be recognized, is really overdue.
Thank you for that. And last but not least, Brian, come forward. It is your birthday, and it's also, he doesn't like to talk about it, it's also Dave's birthday. You're a day apart, so happy birthday to you.
Oh,
and
thanks.
happy birthday
Thank
to
you.
And we made it easy for you to be able to blow out
and eat.
You're getting old.
And eat with your dentures.
But can you eat it? Can you eat yours with a candle going?
Okay, we're going to a place that could be a liability insurance-wise.
Okay, first one.
I think I just burned my nose hairs.
You ready?
Yeah.
1, 2.
There we go.
Thank
Good
you,
job,
everybody.
guys. Dave, take us home.
Well, I mean, what can you say? Alan Meyerson, I always tell you this, but please, please, please listen to this one several times. A lot of times some stuff goes by really quick that you need to delve into. Alan is, I always say he's the reason I became a mixer, and he's the reason I never wanted to be a mixer. When I heard him early on, back when I was working with Cameo, I heard some of his work, and I knew I wanted to do that. But what scared me was I knew I could never do it as good as him. So find yourself a guy to idolize and just rip him blind for everything he knows. And I'll see you next week.